you what we're going to make. It's a very simple contacts database where you have your contacts with your names, with some information, some address information. You can create some notes for every contact. You can enter a picture for every contact. You can make tasks, things that you need to do. You need to write them, you need to call them. Those tasks maybe need to be done for a certain date. They might be urgent or not, and these tasks are either complete or still incomplete. You can show their location on a map. It's not really going to work for this one, I think, because the address that I gave in is like a made-up address. But Google Maps works inside FileMaker if you want. Then if you want, you can see a list of all your contacts, and then you can select one. I don't have a lot of them in here right now, but it's just a little exercise here. And you can select a certain contact. And then if you have all these tasks, it might be annoying to kind of go through all your contacts to look for their tasks. So in the menu, I've made a task list where you can see all the tasks for every person, and you can just very simply show all the incomplete tasks, the tasks that you still need to do, or show all the tasks, or show all the completed tasks. You can very simply kind of go about finding out what it is that still needs to be done. As I said, a very simple exercise, and it's going to show you the basics. Now, maybe the first and most important basic is how do you get around in FileMaker, and maybe it's good that I should tell you that first before we actually start building this thing. Now, it's very simple. The layout, you have this big banner up top, and it kind of always looks pretty much the same, and it's pretty simple to understand, so I'll try and explain it to you. We've just chosen for our contact, so we are now at our contact layout, and we can see up top that we have two contacts. We have this little book thing that we can use to go to our first record and or our first contact, and then we can kind of switch between the first and the second contact. Now, normally you will have a lot more, and then you can kind of browse through them. Now we've got two in total. I can make a new one if I want. If I click new record, then I can add Billy Bob. That's another contact of mine. And if I want, I can delete a record if I don't like Billy Bob, and I can delete him, and then he will be gone. I can find people, so I can click on find, and if I do, sometimes people get a little scared because all of a sudden all their information looks like it's gone, but it's not really gone. It's just been emptied, and FileMaker is displaying all these little search symbols because you can basically look for any kind of in any kind of field that you want. If you're looking for someone with the last name of Doe, then you can do that, and you can perform that find, and you will find only the people named Doe. Now this orb has just changed. It was gray before, and now it's green. It's green because it's telling me that FileMaker has found 2 out of 3 records. So I have a total of 3 contacts, and 2 of them are named Doe. That was the one I was looking for. So I can browse back and forth, and I can see that I have a Jane Doe and a John Doe. Now I can get a little panicky because I thought I had more contacts. Where did they go? Well, they're just hidden because we're inside a found set right now. But I can show all my records. My orb turns gray again, and I can see all 3, and I can get back to my Billy Bob, which is my third one. If you want, while finding, you can search for multiple things at the same time. You can search the city and the last name, and then you will find all the people that live in that city that have that last name. So that's a kind of a handy way to search for different things. Now, if we cancel this find, there is another search box right here that we can also use. And this one, if we enter a value into this search box, it will kind of search over all the fields. So if you're looking for a guy named Doe, we can do that, and we will again find 2 Does. Now this works very well most of the time, unless if you're, for instance, dealing with numbers or something that can appear in multiple different fields, then you might want to be a bit more specific by using your find and entering that field, entering the value in one specific field and only searching in that field. You could also search for multiple things. You can do a find, and you can say find me all people that are called Doe. And for instance, also people that live in zip code 90210. I think I had one of those. If I perform my find, then I will find 1 of 3. So there's 1 Doe that lives in Beverly Hills, apparently. And that way you can also find people. So that's Those are kind of the things you have up top. You can sort your records as well, but in this kind of layout, that is kind of useless. You can go into the list view here, where you can normally see all your contacts. You can't see them now because we've done a find. So we're going to have to show them all again. Now we can sort them if we want. We can sort, for instance, by full name, but that's not very handy. Usually last name is handier, so we can say contacts, last name, and then we can sort either ascending or descending by last name. So then our Bob and Doe are all sorted a bit more appropriately. You can sort by other things as well, but mostly names will be sorted by last name. That's going to be kind of handy. So these are basically the things you're going to be dealing with up top. You can share your database with other people, but that's a whole other section. We're not going to get into that right now. But the most of the navigation happens with these few buttons up top here. And if you kind of get those and you understand how they work, then you've pretty much already figured out how to maneuver around in FileMaker. Alright, this looks good. I think we kind of get how we need to get around. Now let's actually go and build this thing. So let's get started and let's start making our database. We're going to make a new one. You've also got starter solutions that you can use. It gives you a lot of examples, which is kind of cool. But I usually don't like to use these starter solutions because there's a bunch of stuff in there that you don't really know what it is or what it does. And it's sometimes a bit difficult to start changing these things. I always like to create a new database. And let's call this one, how are we going to call it? Contacts. And if you make a new database, you can just make it entirely the way you want it to be, and you will also know exactly what's going on with every single field, every calculation field, every single script, everything that's going on in your file. Let's go to File, Manage Database, because this is basically the main part where you're going to be creating stuff, adding stuff, dealing with the tables, fields, and relationships. You can also use the shortcut Control-Shift-D. So if we go there, we've got basically we've got three tabs here. We've got relationships, which we're going to look at later when we have multiple tables. We've got fields and we've got tables. Now what's the difference? Tables is, for instance, a contacts table, which we actually kind of just created there, which FileMaker kind of created for us. We've got fields, like for instance every contact has a name, a first name, last name, address, stuff like that. Those are the fields. And so we're gonna we've got our contacts table, so we're gonna be adding fields. Now FileMaker always creates this thing automatically, and then it creates this layout, but because it's already created the layout, it hasn't added any fields to it. So what you can do is you can just add fields to this one, or you can just delete this one, also remove occurrences from the graph, and then you can just create a new one. And that way contacts, and that way you will get all your fields added automatically. It's kind of a thing that I find a little strange in FileMaker, but well, it doesn't really matter. So let's create this one. This is actually a problem that only happens with the first file. Later on, if you start adding tables, you won't have that problem. Okay, we've got our contacts table made. Now let's double click it or go to fields and select our contacts table, and let's start adding some fields. What kind of fields would we like? A very important thing, and the thing that I always start with in every single table, is an ID field. We're going to enter the field name in here, and we're going to say that this ID, well, an ID is actually a unique number for every contact, so that we can uniquely identify every contact, because you could have, for instance, two contacts that have the same name. It's not very likely, but it is possible. So you need some way to uniquely identify every single contact. It's going to be a unique number, like I just said, so the type of this field is going to be a number. Now if we create this, then we basically have a simple number field, and that means we will have to manually enter that number ourselves, which is a bad idea because we're going to forget it, or we're going to use the same number twice, and that's not really very foolproof. I think FileMaker should be all about making everything really foolproof. So let's double click this and see if FileMaker can't help us in some way. And we've actually got this option here to auto enter a serial number. We can keep all the settings that we have here. It's generated on creation, which is great. The next value is going to be 1. That means it's going to start at 1 and it's going to increment by 1. So that's great, and that's basically all I need. Just a simple setting here that we do have to remember. For every single table, we would like to have an ID field. like this. Okay, now let's start with our actual fields. What fields do we need for our contact? He's going to have a name. Now, I think it's always smartest to store all your data in the smallest way possible. So the name is not going to be stored completely. It's going to be separated in first name. And that is not going to be a number type. That's actually going to be a text type, and we can create that one. And if we have a first name, then we also have a last name. Now you can see that I'm not using any spaces here anywhere. I think that's handier later on if you want to select, for instance, a field name in a calculation. It's handier that there are no spaces. This is also a text. That's great. Now you might be wondering, what if I want to use a full name? Isn't that simpler? Yes, but it's very easy to take two different fields and place them together. It is almost impossible to take a single full name field and to go and extract the last names properly, because you could have a person that has one first name and one last name, but you can have multiple first names, multiple last names. You can have these little parts in between. So it's almost impossible to go and extract last names later on. If you want to use a last name, for instance, in a letter or an email, you want to write Dear Mr. and then the last name, then you're going to have that last name separately. So now how do we combine those two in a full name? It's very simple with a very simple calculation. Now when I make a calculation field, so let's make it right now, I always use C underscore at the beginning of the field name, and then we're going to call this one full name. This is not going to be a text file, this is going to be a calculation field, sorry, I said file, and then we're going to create this one. And as soon as we want to create a calculation field, FileMaker is going to ask us to specify the calculation. Well, a full name is very simple, it's the first name and the last name. But if we just add them like this, well, that doesn't look very good. I can put a space in here, but I've got two different elements. I've got a first name and I've got a last name. If I want to combine these elements together, I need to use an operator. And the simplest operator is the ampersand. So let's put them in there. Oops, automatically adds a space. And there. Now I've got the first name and the last name. But if I do it like this, I'm going to just have the first name and the last name stuck together. I would like to add a space in between. Now, if I just add a space, that's not going to work. A space is actually a piece of text, and text needs to be added between quotation marks. So I add a quotation mark, a space, and another quotation mark, and now I've successfully added a piece of text, but now I have three elements. So I've got the first name and the text and the last name. So I need to put another operator in between these two elements so that I've got this first name and a space and a last name. Now I always have to choose what the result of my calculation is going to be, and it automatically tells me that it's going to be a number. This is not going to work, for instance, in drop downs and stuff. It's going to give you a question mark, so you do have to pay attention that this calculation result is correct. A full name is not a number, a full name is a text. Okay, so that's kind of good. We've done our few fields already. We've got a calculation field. It was a pretty simple one, so that's kind of doable. What else do we need? Our contact lives somewhere, so that's an address. Address is a text field. Now you can go and use this drop down, or you can just click T on your keyboard to go to a text field. Now sometimes you have to cycle through it because there is text, there is time and timestamp, so sometimes you kind of have to cycle through it by hitting T multiple times. Okay, so address is a text field. Let's create that one. Now we have to determine, are we going to put the house number in this field or in a separate field? We can choose. I will make a separate field just in case, and that's going to be a number field, so I just hit N on my keyboard, or you can just go in here and select number. Okay, let's create this one, an address, a number. What else do we need? A zip code. Again, I'm not using any spaces. This could be a number, but sometimes some zip codes might have letters in there as well. I don't know which one you have, so for safety I'm going to take a text here, and I'm going to create this one. Zip code is a text field. Okay, what else do we have? The town or city is also a text field. Great, can be added. You might be in a certain state. That could be handy as well. Then what else do we have? Maybe the telephone number. Now in theory that would be a number, but you could be adding stuff like slashes or periods, so I'm going to keep this as a text. Then we might have an email field. It's also going to be a text field because it's got a lot of funky stuff in there. then a website address could be cool, also a text field, and what we could even do is add a picture of our contact. Now a picture is kind of a special field. It's not a text field, it's something else. It's a container field where we will store an image. So this needs to be a container. We can create that one as well, and there we go. We've got quite a few fields. We've got our auto enter serial ID, we've got our calculation for the full name. This is looking kind of good. Let's hit OK and let's see what we've got. We've got nothing here, but if you remember, we made a new contacts table. So let's go into that one, and this one, as you can see, it has automatically already added all the fields to our layout. If we go to File and Manage Layouts, then we can just get rid of this first one because we don't really need it. There you go, that one is gone and deleted. So now we've got one layout, it's our contacts layout. We have our field picker here that we can use to add fields to our layout, but we don't really need this one right now, so I'm going to close this one. If we want it back, it's under View, Field Picker, so we can always get that back. I'm going to start out with a little trick that I actually always kind of use, and that is I always make one layout in Table View and one layout in layout view, in form view. So we're in layout mode right now. That is the one we use to change a layout, because we can take these fields right now and we can move them around, put them in a different order. That's all of that stuff. Editing a layout happens in layout mode. You've also got other modes like find mode, if you want to find your stuff, but we don't even have any contacts entered yet. We do have browse mode for that, where we can enter data. We can try this out right now, go into browse mode, and then we can see that we've got all these fields that are empty. If I would like to click one now, FileMaker is going to tell me that no records are present. To create a new record, choose the new record menu command. Okay, new record is up here. If we click this one, hey, we've created our first new contact. Now the ID number is automatically created. This is going to be contact number 1. FileMaker has decided that for us, and that's good, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we can start by entering a first name, and as you can tell, this full name is going to be created by, well, adding the first and the last name together. I've just entered the first name, but nothing is happening. That's because I'm still editing this field. I can save this field by going out of this field. I can go out of this field by entering the tab, or by clicking the tab, and that will bring me to my next field, or I can just click outside of it or hit return on my keyboard. I'm going to hit the tab key. Then you will see that I arrive in my last name field, which is handy. I can immediately start typing here, and my full name is already starting to be created. I need to just add a last name. Nothing happens until I click outside here. Then my calculation has created for me a full name. Now I can start filling in all the rest of my stuff. I can make him live at Main Street, number 1 in zip code 90210. That's the zip code we all know. I think that's Beverly Hills, and the state would then be California, if I'm not mistaken. And then I can just add 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, usually it's like 555, isn't it? These phone numbers. Email is info@johndoe.com, and we can just give him a website. Now we can add a picture as well. We can just right click and go insert picture. We can also, if you use this on a like an iPad or something like that, then you can immediately take a picture directly from inside. This guy is an actor apparently. Okay, so you can take a picture on your iPad directly from inside FileMaker Go by just pushing on this field, and then the FileMaker will ask you if you want to take a picture. You can just take it right away and it'll be stored right in this field immediately. So that's kind of handy if you want to store contacts. Now we've got different ways to look at this layout. We are now in form view, but we can also go in table view. If we click table view, then you can see it looks a little bit like an Excel sheet. You can make these a little smaller if you want, but you've got all your data in here. Now what I like to do is always keep my original table So this one, the first one that's automatically created by FileMaker, I always like to keep this one in table view, because then I always have a way to kind of go in there and look at my data, because sometimes these fields in table view, they can be obscured if you go into form view and you create, for instance, checkboxes or radio buttons or stuff like that. And I really like to see what's actually inside my fields, so I always keep like a table view layout separate from my actual data entry layout. So how do we go about doing this? We're going to have to go back for a second to form view, and then we go back into layout mode, and then we get this new button here that allows me to create a new layout. If I click that button, FileMaker is going to ask me, well, what do I want to make a layout for? Well, for my contacts table, and I'm going to call this one Lay Contacts. That way I'm getting a new layout. I can see that it's a layout because this is going to be the layout for data entry, this is going to be for a computer, and it's going to be in a form view. If I would make this for a touch device, I can also choose the orientation of the touch device, like an iPhone or an iPad, but for the computer that's not going to be necessary. Okay, so now I've got my new layout, Lay Contacts. So I've got my contacts here that I'm going to keep. I'm going to exit the layout. I'm going to keep this one in table view, and then my other one here is going to stay in form view, so that my user can use this as a data entry layout, but me as a developer, I can always go and see behind the screens what's going on. Maybe if there are fields that are not on the layout, I can still see them here. So this is a powerful one for troubleshooting and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go back to our Lay Contacts. And now I guess what we're going to do now is create our layout for our contacts. How do we do that? There is nothing here. That was kind of handy the first time I made my table. FileMaker added all these fields automatically. We're going to have to edit our layout ourselves, and we're going to have to add these fields manually. We're going to use the field picker, and what we can do is we can just select all of them, and so we can drag them onto our layout. But the ID field, I don't really want to see that one. It's a number that is entered automatically. I don't want to see that number. I don't want to have to deal with that number. I don't want my user to worry about that sort of stuff, because he's going to ask you, what is that number? Why do I have to enter there? You don't have to enter anything. It's very simple. So if you don't want your user to worry about it, you just leave it out. The full name, I'm going to leave that one out as well, because I'm going to do something different with that one, but all the rest of them, they can kind of go with me. I can choose how I'm going to place these ones. I'm going to place them vertically, which is kind of cool, and the label should be standing in front of the field. That's fine. I'm going to drag all of these out, and FileMaker is immediately going to drop all of them on my layout right here. I'm going to close this one. I'm going to exit my layout to look at my beautiful layout that I've just made, and I can see one first problem or an annoying thing is that I've got my name separated, which is what kind of cool, but usually I might know the people by their full name, and I kind of want to see that full name in a way somewhere. We could add the full name field here, but another trick that I like to use is I will put the full name in large on top of the layout. I always like that. I think that's kind of good. We can add that field up here, but I think a better trick is to just use the text tool, go up here, click in the header up top, and then we can insert a merge field, or we can use Control M. If we do that, FileMaker is going to ask me, well, which merge field would you like to add? And a merge field is a kind of field that you might use as well in a letter or something like that. When you want to have, for instance, the address, the number, the zip code, the city, all of that. If you want to add that in the letter, you can use merge fields for that. But we can also use merge fields on a layout. So I'm going to add my full name, and this adds the merge field. You can see that because of these little characters that show up, that this is a merge field. I'm going to put this one here up top, and I'm going to go ahead and click these double A's here. That gives me a new toolbar, and that allows me to kind of change the font size, and then I can put this full name. I'll make this a bit longer for long names. I can put it up top, and if I go back into browse mode now I can see that my big first name is on the top of the layout, which is kind of handy. Let's go ahead and make a new record just real quick, and let's call this one Jane Doe. And if we browse back and forth now, you can see that the name changes depending on the record where I'm currently on. So that's a good one. That's a cool one. Okay, is this looking good? If I use my tab, then I can go through all of these fields. That's really cool, but it's not very well laid out, I think. I already know that in the end I'm going to be adding tasks and notes, and I don't really have a lot of place for them right now. So I'm going to reorganize this layout a little bit. I'm going to edit layout, and let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to use these email and websites fields, and I'm going to put them up top. That's kind of cool. That way I have them handy. If I want to email someone, I have their email address right there. I'm going to take this picture field and I'm going to put it up here. That's also good because then I can see the picture of the person. And then I've got basically all my address fields. I'm going to get rid of them and put them somewhere else. What can I do to kind of save a lot of space? I could use a tab control. That's kind of a handy thing. Let's click it. Let's drag a box from down here to up here, and then I'm creating a tab control, and a tab control allows me to create multiple tabs for multiple types of data. So I'm gonna make one for address. I'm gonna make one for notes. Those will be added later, and I'm gonna make one for tasks. Okay, so those are 3 tabs. You can change the settings a little bit if you want. You can choose which one will be your default front tab. For now, this is the first one, address, and that's fine for me. So let's click OK. And now you can see that I've got 3 different tabs here. That's kind of cool because if I add all my address data here onto this first tab, then I can make my tab control a lot bigger. And then I've basically saved a lot of space. Let's go back and exit our layout, and now we can see that I've got all this room now to put notes, and I've got tasks that I can put up here, and I even have a lot of space up here that I can just use for some extra fields. We could add a few fun things to our layout now that we are working on our layout anyway. Let's quickly go in here and let's make these things a little bit smaller. And what we could do is we could make it so that when there is an email address or a website, that we can automatically either go to that website or send an email to this person. We can make some buttons that could help us do that. Let's find out how we can make some buttons to make our job a little bit easier. So I can say email. I can make that into a little text here, so I use my text tool to write a bit of a text here, and to make it clear that that's a button, I can underline this, and then I could choose a color like a blue that makes it look a bit like a hyperlink. And then what I can do is I can right click on this one and I can go to button setup, and then I could say that this button needs to do a certain action for me. I'm going to scroll all the way down because I think the send email is all the way down, and then I've got a few options for this this button setup. I can change to hand cursor when I go over the button. I like that one because that makes it clear to me that that's a button. I could perform without a dialog, but that's not very interesting in this case. I would like to have a dialog. I would like to maybe go back to button setup to add one thing. I'm going to specify one thing here. What I want to specify, of course, is the email address that I'm going to be sending an email to, because I do have to send that email to that contact. So I can send via an email client or an SMTP server. You can set up an SMTP server in Filemaker, and then it sends it that way. Or you can just use your email client, which is maybe a little bit simpler. I'm going to specify the address, so I'm going to the to field, and I'm going to go and say specify the field name, because if I specify the email address, then I have to manually type it in here. That's not smart. But if I use the field name here, then I can go in my contacts table and choose the email field, so that for every contact the email will be sent to that person's email address. You can already type ahead some stuff in here if you want, but I'm going to keep this very simple because I don't know what I'm going to be emailing them about. So I'm going to do this, and that's very simple. Okay, let's try this out and see if this works. Let's see what happens if I click. This is probably going to launch my email program, and it's going to take a little while. But normally speaking, you will get a window of your email program that basically allows you to, like this, that allows you to send an email. So the email address is automatically showing up in the to field, which is kind of cool. We can also add a button for the website here, and I'm going to show you a different way to make a button. Let's go back to Edit Layout and let's choose Insert Picture, and let's go and find a nice picture, a picture for, let's see, what do we want? Let's see, what could we use? Maybe under the eye here. What kind of this is not really good. Let's do that again. Let's find that thing first. Website. Okay, go to website. Okay, cancel. Okay. Take 2. We could also add a button to go to the website, but instead of using a simple boring text, we can add or insert a picture. Let's do that. That's a good idea. We can just look for instance, something like this. And this is a PNG image, which has some transparency in it, which is kind of cool, because that way the transparency also kind of shows up here, and that thing remains, that image kind of remains transparent, and that looks really good on our layout. So this image can also become a button. We just simply right click it and go to button setup, and then we have to use a different type of action. It's not a send mail, but it's an open URL. And let's specify the URL. Let's specify it, and the URL is going to be our website, of course, so that for every contact we will be going to exactly that person's website. Now if we exit our layout, we can see that this has become a button as well, and if we click this button, we would be going to the johndoe.com website. Now we can add something to this button if we want. If we click this button and we go to position here, then we can add a tooltip. We can say, for instance, go to website. That's a good tooltip. If we exit the layout and we hover on this one, it gives us that tooltip, go to website. Or what we could also do is take that one step further. We can choose this button, we can edit this tooltip, and we can say, instead of just simply go to website, we can say go to, and then we can use an operator here, as we have already learned before. We can actually put the website in here, and then we've got go to and this contact website. So let's try this one out, and then our tooltip says go to johndoe.com. So that's kind of cool and a handy way to tell your user exactly what he is going to be doing. So we could also use a picture for the email if we want, but this way you kind of see, and the email could actually also have a tooltip, so this way you can see the two different ways of creating buttons. Sometimes you could be on your layout and you could be entering data, and if you tab from the first name you tab, it goes to an incorrect field for now, because right now it goes from first name to website, then back to last name, and then it goes down there, goes through all of these, and then it arrives in picture, and then it arrives in email. So that's a bit of a strange order. Now we can change that. Going into edit layout, we can go into layouts and set tab order. If we do that, we get a lot of these numbers here, and then we can kind of go and start changing these numbers and kind of decide what order we want. So we want the first name first and the last name. Then we might want to use as a third one the address. Number 4 is then the number, and so forth and so forth. 6, 7, 8, and then I might want to go back up here. 9, 8, 9, and then 10, and then number with the picture. We might not even want to go there. So this looks kind of better. Yeah, and it ends up with this one. I also don't really need to go here. So let's try that one out. You have this little OK that you need to click then. Let's go here and let's tab. It goes through all of these and then these, and that's a better order. So it kind of makes that cycle. So that's a good way to kind of fix your order if it goes a little bit strange. So a good start, let's start adding some fun stuff to this. We've got our address, now let's add some notes. There are basically different ways to add notes. Let's have a look at the different ways that we could use. The simplest way would be to go to File, Manage, Database, and let's simply add a field called Notes. It's going to be a text field, we can simply add it. Okay, then we can go into Layout Mode. We can go and take the field tool, we can drag it down, and we could, I'll just put it here for a second because we actually have to bring this to our Notes tab. FileMaker is going to ask us which field we want to add and if we want to create a label or not. Let's create a label. Then let's go to our Notes tab here and let's drag this one here. And this is one way to add notes. I can make this really big, and if I want I can even go to data here and I could say this has to be an edit box, but I want to include a vertical scroll bar. Let's exit the layout, let's have a look. Great. I can add notes here, but this is not really the best way to add notes, because what if you add a note on a certain date? And then you can add a note, but then this is not very organized, this is not very handy to kind of look through, to browse through. This is not really the best way to be adding notes, especially not if you're going to be making multiple notes. Eventually you will have a big text field and you'll have to scroll through it. It's not really the best way to do it. A better way to do it is to make a separate notes table and to relate those notes to the contacts. Okay, I don't really want to do it this way, so I'm going to delete these notes. I'm going to go to File, Manage, Database. I'm going to take this notes field and delete it because it's really not the best way to do it. And I'm going to go back to tables and I'm going to make a notes table. So let's create this one. Now we have our second table, kind of cool. And now we can go ahead and see what we're going to need in this notes table. Now, if you remember from the first one, I'm always going to start with an ID, which is a number. I'm going to double click it and make this a serial number. That's what I want for every note, so that I can separately identify every single note if I have to. Then, because these notes have to be related to a contact, basically when I write a note, I also have to write down which contact this note is related to. I'm not going to have to do this manually. FileMaker is going to do this automatically for me, but it needs a field to do that in. This is going to be the contacts ID FK. FK stands for foreign key. That's basically because we're going to be entering the ID of the contact in this field in the notes table. So we're going to be entering an ID from a different table in this table. So therefore it's called a foreign key. This is going to be a number. That's good. Let's create this one. And what else do we need? We might want to actually write a note. So that's going to be a text field. Cycling through these just by hitting T on my keyboard. So let's create that note field. And what else is important about a note is that an old note or a recent note, we might want to know the date. And actually, in fact, I don't really always want to manually enter that date. I just want to enter the note, and I don't really want to worry about the date. So I want FileMaker to automatically enter the date the moment I create the note. So I'm going to call this one creation date. And this is not going to be a text field, this is going to be a date field, and I'm going to create that, but I'm going to go and look in the settings. Can I do something here with the auto enter? Well, I can automatically enter the creation date. That's handy, it's right there. Okay, that's good. That's kind of what I would like. I don't really think I need a lot of other stuff in this field. So let's say okay. And if we look here, we can see that FileMaker has already created my notes layout here, and I can go into table mode so I can see all my notes, but I don't really need these notes here. I'm going to be putting them on my layout right here. So actually what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to go to File, Manage Layouts. I'm going to organize my layouts a little bit because otherwise they're going to start to become a mess. I'm going to click New here and I'm going to click Folder, and I'm going to say Tables for my table view layouts. and I'm going to create another one called layouts for my layouts, like my contacts layout. Now I made this in my table layout, so that's not really where it's supposed to be, but I can just drag it over there and then it kind of comes out. If I drag it to the left. Now I can take my contacts here and put it in underneath my tables. My notes is also a table view, but my contacts, my lay contacts, is actually a layout. So I'm going to place them like this. You can just move them right underneath the folder and they will go in. And then if I look here, then I can see that I've got my contacts and my notes tables, and I've got my layout for my contacts. Okay, well organized, that's very good. Now how do we add our notes here? Now the first and simplest way to do it would just be to drag your field tool down and to just say I want from my notes field, I would like to have my note field here. But the bummer about that one is that you can just do that once. You can create one field, but that's it. You can just enter one note and then you're done. You can't make any other notes. Plus there is another problem going on. If we exit our layout and we try to enter a note here, FileMaker is going to tell me, I can't read it right now, but it's going to tell me, if I make it a bit bigger, that this is a unrelated table. I can't enter anything in here because this table is not yet related to my contacts. That's a bit of a problem. How will we solve this? Well, there was this other tab in File Manage Database called Relationships that might have something to do with this situation. So I've got my contacts here. I've got my notes, but there is indeed no relationship between the two. Now my contacts have an ID, and I had prepared this field here for my contacts ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ID, I'm going to click and drag, and then I get this little relationship line. Then I'm going to drag this to this contacts IDFK. And now I've created a relationship between the contacts table and the notes table. If I double click this one, then I get to edit the relationship, and I get some extra settings. Now let's have a look at these settings and let's try and figure out what they mean. So I've got my ID field of my contacts, and that is equal to the contacts IDFK field. So that means that the value in this field is always going to be equal to the value in this field. So if you're on your contact layout and you create a note, then FileMaker will automatically enter the ID of your contact in this field so that there is no mistake, so that that note is definitely related to that contact. So that's pretty handy. FileMaker kind of solves this for you, so you don't have to worry about it. These IDs are also created automatically, so again, IDs that you don't have to worry about. Now we do have some settings at the bottom here, and these are kind of important because I want to be able, when I'm on the contacts layout, I want to be able to create notes from the contacts layout. So I have to check this first one that says allow the creation of records in this table, so in the notes table, via this relationship. That's kind of important because I want to be able to create notes from the contacts layout. Another one here is delete related records in this table when a record is deleted in the other table. So that means, do you want to delete all your notes if your contact is deleted? Because these things are related to each other, if you have a contact and you create a bunch of notes for this contact, well, what has to happen with these notes if you delete this contact? Now, you could say, well, if the contact is gone, then I don't need those notes anymore because those notes will be related to a contact that no longer exists. These will be kind of like orphaned records. So I can check this box and I can say delete my related records, so delete my notes in this table when a contact is deleted in the other table. So that's kind of good. That keeps your database clean. The only moment when this becomes an annoying problem is if you accidentally delete a contact, and then of course all his notes are gone as well. So that's not good. But accidentally deleting stuff is just never a good idea. I think this is a good setting, so let's keep it like this. Okay, this is set up kind of good. Let's go back in here to our notes. Now it doesn't say anymore that it is a unrelated record, so let's see if we can enter a note here. Looks like we can. Let's figure out if we actually did. Let's go to tables and notes. and it looks like it worked. We've got our note, and it actually automatically says that this is ID number 1, so the first note. It's related to my contact number 1. That's kind of cool. Let's try something else. Let's go back to our layout. I did already have a second contact chain though. Let's make another note. And if we do that and we go back to our notes table, then we can see that this note has been kind of like linked automatically to our second contact, and this is to our first contact. Now, the only problem with this kind of system is that this is handy in a lot of situations, but for notes it's not that handy, because I do want to be able to make a ton of notes, and that is not going to work using this system. So let's edit layout. Let's Control Z. Let's select these two fields here, and or the field and the label, and let's get rid of them. Now I just kind of accidentally dragged my tabbed object away. What I can do to prevent that from happening is go to position and then lock this one in place so that I can select inside it, but this tabbed object itself is going to stay in place. Now, what can we use to make multiple related records? FileMaker has something for that that's called a portal tool. Let's click our portal tool. Let's go down, leave a little bit of space here for the labels later on. So let's drag a big square here. And then we get, again, a portal setup, again, settings we need to set up. What do we want to show? I want to show notes, very simple. Do I want to sort them? Yeah, maybe by date. So I can sort and I can say creation date. And then I can choose, do I want them ascending or descending? I think I want the newest node on top. So I think it's going to be descending. We can just check that out later on. It doesn't really matter. Do I want to filter them? Nah. Do I want to allow deletion of the nodes? Yeah. If I make a node and that node is no longer useful, then I do want to delete that one. And do I want to show a vertical scroll bar? Yes, if we have lots of nodes. And then now I'm going to have 9 rows in this. That's okay. For now. Okay, which fields would I like to see in this portal? I don't want to deal with the ID because that's a useless thing to me. The contacts IDs are going to be filled in automatically, so I also don't need that one. I do want to write the note, and I do want to see the creation date because that's kind of interesting for me. So I'm going to add those, and then as you can see, these are kind of not really filled out entirely, so I'm going to drag this one here, make it a bit bigger, but this is a date field, so that can be quite small, and then this node field is going to be kind of big. Something like this. Okay, let's exit our layout and let's take a look at how this looks like. Oh, look, I can automatically add a new node here, and then when I'm done with this node, FileMaker automatically enters the creation date right here. That's kind of good. That's a good start. Now sometimes I might be entering a node that's a little bit of an older node, and then the creation date might not be right. So I can get in here and I can start typing, but actually date fields have a really cool thing. You can click it, go to data in your inspector, and then you can say, for instance, the control style doesn't have to be an edit box, but a drop down calendar, and it has to include an icon to show and hide calendar, and this is already shown up right here. So let's try this out. If I go back to my notes, I can actually click this date and click this calendar and select in a nice drop down calendar. I can select a different field, and now we can see that the sorting is in fact leaving my most recent date up top and my older date is down there. So that's a good one. One more thing we need to add is we want to be able to delete nodes if we've got a wrong node. I want to be able to delete it. Now it's just this wrong node flooped up because of the dates. FileMaker automatically sorts this by date. So my node is now here. I want to delete this node. How do I do that? I'm going to create a cute little button with a cross and put it in there. So let's insert a picture. I could also just type the word delete, but that's probably not the best idea. I've got a little uncheck here, uncheck here. Let's try this one. Again, a little PNG image with transparency. let's use the arrows on our keyboard to kind of bring it right there. And then I'm going to go right click, go to button setup, and then I have to kind of look at the different options that I have. Now I've got records here, and I've got delete record. That's kind of a good one, but that will delete my contact. That's not really what I want. I want to delete the portal row. And I'm going to, I could perform this without a dialog, but basically the dialog is going to ask me, do you really want to delete this one? And I think that's always a good idea to have that dialog. So I'm going to leave this the way it is, and then let's try this one out. Let's exit the layout. Let's go back to notes, and I've got my wrong note here. Let's click this. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this one related record? Yes, I want to delete, and now it's gone. Very simple. I've got my warning, so I don't accidentally delete anything, and I've got my little cute little X button here. Okay, that's looking kind of good. One thing we might want to add as some headers here and some labels here. Note, I'm gonna give this one the name note. I'm gonna add it somewhere here, and then I'm gonna control click and drag this one over here, and you get these blue lines that kind of help you to align stuff. Dates, there you go. Now I've got some cute little headers here, so we know what the data in those fields is. Okay, I think this makes a couple of nice, or for a nice note tab. Let's see what else we can do. The next thing we could add is our tasks. We've got our notes, and our tasks is going to look very similar, but it just might have a few different kinds of fields. So let's go to File, Manage Database. We're going to create another table. This one's going to be tasks, and we're going to create this one. We're going to double click this one so we can add some fields. As always, I'm going to start with my ID number field, which is a serial number. I also, as same as the notes, have to relate the tasks to the contact ID FK, which is a number field, so I know who this task belongs to. I will have the actual task, which is a text field, and then I could have a few fields, for instance, like the date as well. And that could also be creation date, which is a date field, and if I wanted the creation, I need to do this extra auto enter option. You could also have, for instance, a completion date if you want. We could actually add that, and that will just be a simple date field that you manually have to enter because you don't know when it needs to be completed. We can do some fun stuff with that, and then we can have some, for instance, an urgency. Is that an urgent task or not? That could be a text field, and we can have a status. The status is, for instance, is it completed or is it still incomplete? You can actually, there is a field here that I haven't really talked about yet. You can make notes in here. So complete or incomplete. You could type that at the bottom there, so you can kind of remember. It's a bit of a. You can also click here to see your notes. It's a bit of a reminder of what this field was for. Sometimes you have a lot of fields and some special fields and you forget, so this can help you remind stuff. It's always good to leave notes here and there in your file, just as a reminder for when it gets a little bit big and complicated. Okay, we've got our tasks made. We need to go in here and we need to relate these tasks to our contact. And again, it's very simple. Contact ID, click and connect those two up. Now we want to allow the creation of tasks, and when my contact is deleted, I don't need his tasks anymore. So let's check these two. Okay, that's looking good. I can go into tasks here, I can go into edit layout, and I can do the same thing as I did before. Again, a portal tool, you make it a bit lower so that you don't really see, so you have some room for the labels later on. This is not from notes but from tasks. Do I want to sort them? Yes, I do want to sort them, but I'm going to do that later on. I'm going to sort probably by urgency or something like that. Allow the deletion, yes. Show the scroll bar, yes. Okay, that's a good one. What do I want to see? I want to see my tasks. I want to see the creation date, completion date, the urgency, and the status. Okay, a little annoying thing is that I don't have my labels yet, so I'll quickly make those. So I've gone ahead and quickly created some labels, and now we can add our tasks. We can maybe make these date fields. We can go to data and make them drop-down calendars, so that we can change those dates if we want. And then there are a few other fields that we need to kind of think about. What are we going to enter in the urgency field and in the status field? Now, status could be complete or incomplete. And so we can kind of make this data entry a little simpler. We can give it either a drop-down list, a checkbox set, or a radio button set. Now, the status is going to either be complete or incomplete. And it's not going to be multiple choices, so it's not going to be a checkbox set where you can choose multiple values. I think it's best to make this a radio button set where you can just choose either complete or incomplete. So let's do that one. Let's create a new value list for this, and it's going to be called complete, incomplete, and the values will be complete or incomplete. Two very simple custom values. Now, I think every single time that we create a task, that task will still be incomplete because you've just created it. So I think it's going to be kind of silly to have to select this incomplete all the time. And I do want this value to be entered correctly because it's interesting for me to be able to see all the incomplete tasks. So what I'm going to do to ensure that that happens is I'm going to go to File, Manage Database. I'm going to my tasks here, and I'm going to go to my status, and I'm going to say that my FileMaker needs to auto-enter some data into that field when it's created, and it needs to say incomplete. That way every created task is by definition incomplete. Okay, good. Urgency, now that's a different thing. You can probably have different types of urgencies, and you can choose if that's a predefined list that you want to have, or if people can just manually enter stuff in there. Now, if people manually enter stuff in there, this might become a bit of a mess, and so you might want to make a drop-down list. Let's make a new one for urgency, and let's say not urgent, urgent, super urgent, disaster. Okay, let's have a look at this and see if this all works or not. Let's go to tasks and let's make a task. Call him ASAP. Oh, this is Jane, so it's called her ASAP. This is created today, which is good. The completion date, we can choose a date. We should probably do that today. We should call her ASAP. Urgency is super urgent, and then it is incomplete right now because we haven't called her yet. Now, one thing we've forgotten to add here in the end is like what we have here in our notes table, and what we can actually go and do is copy this one. We can just hit Control Copy on Windows, and we can go in here and paste this one in here. Now, my layout is getting a bit small. I don't have any room here, but I can cheat a little bit. I'm going to unlock this tab control object here, just drag it a bit more to the side, give it a bit more room right here. That's kind of good. And then I can lock this one again, and I can take this one, make it a bit larger so that I'm really using all the space on my layout. I'm going to copy this little delete thingy here, and the button setup still says delete portal row, so that's kind of good. I can even give this a tooltip delete, and if I exit my layout, then I've got my notes, my tasks, and I've got my delete buttons. That's good. So I can do a test here to see if that delete really works. Let's go try this out. Yep, and it's gone. Okay, so now I can make tasks as well. I have to call her ASAP. Let's go to John Doe, and we can see that no tasks for John Doe exist. I need to write him. And this is created on this date. I can maybe do this on a later date. a couple of days from now. It's not urgent and it is incomplete. I could maybe have another task in there about food or something. And let's say that this was a later note, a couple of days ago. Completion date was the day after. It was not urgent, but it has been completed by now. So this shows you that you start to get a bunch of notes and tasks and stuff like that, and basically your database is starting to come to life. So this layout is based on the contacts table. So in this layout we're going to be seeing all our contacts, and our tasks are in there as well, but we have to scroll through every contact to see their tasks and to find out if there is any task that we need to be doing right now. But there is a handier way to do this. We can also make another layout that is actually based on the tasks table itself, and then we can just show all the tasks on one single layout, and then we can see which ones need our attention. So let's go and do that. Let's go into Edit Layout and make a new layout. But this time we're not going to show layouts from contacts, we're going to show our tasks. And I'm going to call this one Lay Tasks. And actually we're going to make a list, so I'm going to call this one List Tasks. This is going to be for our computer, and I'm not going to use a form view, but a list view. Let's finish this, and this gives me a very narrow kind of area here. It gives me a body, a header, and a footer, and now I'm going to have to add some fields myself. I can do this again by using my view field picker here, or I could just use this one to drag fields in. But I do kind of like this one because I can kind of tell, I can choose this kind of placement, and I can put the labels above the field, so that might work for this one. What do I want? I want my task to show up. Creation date, completion date, urgency, and status. These are all kind of good. I want all of them, so let's drag them up here. The only difficult part is now to just kind of guess where the header is going to be, and I also think that probably we'll guess like somewhat halfway. I guess this probably is going to give me a bit of a problem with the layout. Oh no, it's kind of okay. The text here is white, so that's good, it's readable. We've only got maybe a little bit, we've gone a little too high, so let's select all our fields right here. Let's see if I didn't forget any. No, status is the last one. And let's use our arrows to bring these down a little bit. And then our body can be made a little bit smaller, a little bit more narrow here. Okay, that's great. Now our urgency field might be made a little bit smaller. And then our status field also needs to move up because it's a bit too far out. Now I had created some, like this one was a drop down, so I'm going to have to redo that for this layout. This data was a drop down list, and the drop down list was urgency, and this one was actually a radio button set for complete and incomplete. So I can see that this is now looking kind of good, and this one is working as well. So I've got the two date fields. I want to maybe turn these as well into drop down calendars, and then my task is here. My task will be a little small, so maybe I can take all of these and move them over a little bit, and then I can just take my task and just make it a bit bigger like this. There, so I can see a little bit more of my task. And now if I go into Edit Layout, I will see that I've got my tasks here, but there is one problem, or maybe two problems. First of all, I don't like the fact that this one does have fields around it, but the other ones don't. And this is because it kind of, FileMaker kind of highlights the active record for me. I don't really like that. So I'm going to go to Edit Layout, Layouts, Layout Setup, and I'm going to uncheck this Delineate fields on current record only, because I kind of think that that's a little bit annoying. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to exit the layout, and then you will see that you have actual fields around all of them. Now that's a personal thing that you can choose for yourself. Just choose whichever one you like. Okay, what's another problem? First of all, these dates are just these labels are just using the field names, so they might not be completely ideal. This is better. And now one problem is I've got these nodes or these tasks, but call her, I don't know who her is, write him, I don't know who him is, so I've got a bit of a problem. We can solve this problem very easily by adding the name of that person. Now the name of the person is not in the task table, which is good because otherwise you would have to note the table for every note the name for every single task. That's kind of stupid. But we do have the ability to simply add a field, and in fact let's scroll back a little bit. Let's make our layout a little bit bigger. Then we can just take our field tool right here, just drag it down, add a field at the end here. And we can simply go to the contacts table, because that one is, as you can see here, a related table. So to the tasks table we have two related tables. Contacts is related, and we can just go and get the full name. We don't want to create a label in the front there, so let's do this. And then we have the full name of the person. If we exit our layout, we can see that Jane Doe, John Doe, John Doe, we now also see the names of the of this contact. Now this is handy, this is cool. We can take this one step further. Actually we can take this a couple of steps further. We can, because I have to call Jane Doe, but I don't know what her number is. So then I'll have to go to my contacts layout and go look for her. That's not very handy. So let's do a couple of things here. Let's select this full name field. Let's make it an underline and a blue color so that we know that this is going to be a button. And let's do a button setup. What I want to do is go to that contact layout and immediately see the record for that contact. Now because it is related records, we can use go to related records, and then we can specify that I want to get a related record from contacts, and I want to show it on the layout of the contact. So my lay contact. There you go. That's kind of cool. I don't want to show this in a new window. I also don't need to show only related records. I don't need to see only that one contact. I don't mind being able to scroll through all of them. So let's see if this works already. Let's see, we've got Jane Doe. So if you click this one, that brings us to our lay contacts on the Jane Doe field right here, and I can immediately see her contact information. Now I go to her tasks and I see that basically this task is indeed here. If I go back to my list of tasks, then I can then deal with the other ones as well. If I click John Doe, it will show me John Doe's layout. This is kind of handy and this is kind of fun. We can organize this a little bit more in different ways if we want. We could, for instance, say, show me all the incomplete tasks on the top, which is kind of already doing probably accidentally. So that's happening already. We could sort, and we could say give me the status, and we could sort by status. So now it's basically the letter C that's up top. We can sort upside down in descending order. And this is going to show me all the incomplete tasks on the top. So that's kind of good. If we would take this incomplete task and say that, okay, I've called her, this is now complete. If I do this, then FileMaker will automatically make that record skip down because it is sorting the incomplete ones up top. So this is a very handy layout and a very handy way to see all the tasks for all your contacts and know which tasks you have to be dealing with. We can take this one step further to organize this a little bit better. We can go into Edit Layout, and we could say, for instance, in Layouts, we could go into Part Setup, and we could create a new part so that we can basically group all these tasks by the contact, if you will, because that might be show me a bit of a better overview. I'm gonna sort this sub-summary part by contact IDFK. Let's print that above. Okay, I'm done with that, and I'm going to basically add a text field here, and I'm gonna do again the trick I've did before, insert merge field, to enter the name of this contact, the full name of this contact. Now I can make this a bit bigger and a bit bold so that it really stands out, and I'm going to put it here. Oops, make this large for long names, I can maybe even place it a bit like this, and it's a pretty big field, so let's make that a bit smaller. Okay, let's exit our layout, and basically now we can see that nothing has changed. Why? Because that sub-summary part is only going to show up when my records are sorted by the contact ID. So let's sort them by, let's clear this one, and let's say I want to sort by, out of my table tasks, contact ID FK. If I do that, then you see that they will show up. Now I've got my John Doe, he's got a couple of tasks here, and my Jane Doe has a couple of tasks here. So that is handy. The only thing about this that kind of makes that annoying is that now you don't see all your incomplete tasks on the top. You see it's nicely organized per person, but if every person has a bunch of tasks, then this system could be kind of annoying. Now it doesn't really have to be a big problem, because you can always still sort by status, and I think this was in descending order. Let's sort this one, and then they do kind of show up like this, but it's annoying to have to go in here all the time. You can just make that really simple by adding a couple of buttons on the top, and then you can sort either by person, or you can sort in any kind of different way you want, and you can have those sorts basically stored and saved in some scripts that you can run. Because I like both of those views actually. Let's go back into edit layout, and let's go and see if we can make this work for us. I'm going to make my header a little bit bigger so that I have a bit more room to place some buttons, and I'm going to select all of this stuff and drag it down a little bit. Okay, let's create some buttons. We have a button to here, and we can just create a big box, and then we can perform a script, or this is basically just going to be one simple step, so we can just choose that simple step. It's going to be a simple sort step, and the sort is under found sets. You've got sort records. I'm going to perform this without a dialog, because I'm going to specify the sort order before, which is now. So I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to say this one, it tells me status in descending order. Okay, that's fine. Let's do that. And so this one is sort by status. Stored by status, or you could just say incomplete up top. I do want to show you a little trick right now. If you've created a button and you want to change the text, you have to use the text tool to select the text on the button so you can change it. Incomplete on top. There you go, a button. Now we can make another button. We can control drag this button. That way we have the exact same size of button, and we can put it next here. We can change the text, and we could say sort by contact. And then we could go to button setup and change the sort. So we can specify a different type of sort order. We can clear this. We can say contact IDFK, and actually if we want, what we can do is we can add a second sort, because we want to sort by contact, but for every contact we want the incomplete ones up top. So we're going to do add this one in descending order. There you go. And okay, so now we have two buttons, and let's try this out, see if this works. They're actually not showing a hand, so I'm going to go back to button setup, and I'm going to select this one, change to hand cursor, because I do like my buttons to have a bit of a hand cursor. There you go, because that way you can really see it's a button. So now I've got them sorted by contact, and for every contact it's got the incomplete one up top and the complete one lower there. You could also change this. Let's try this sort, and let's change the status here. Let's sort, and if I'm going to click sort, you're going to see that these two are going to switch place. See, now the complete one is up top and the incomplete one is down, but I've just changed the sort manually here. My button will still sort by contact the way it was before, and now I can do incomplete up top. There, I can see all my incomplete tasks, and I can also see the person that the contact that this task belongs to, but I can sort them any which way I want. Any which way I want to see them. So that's kind of handy. Another thing we could do is we could, for instance, if we get a lot of tasks that are already completed and I don't want to see those tasks anymore, I could hide those tasks. I could, for instance, do a find. I could say show me only the incomplete ones and perform a find. Now it shows me only one task that still needs to be done. This could be kind of handy as well, and if I sort this one by contact, then I can see that I've got one incomplete task for John Doe. Now this is kind of this one becomes kind of useless then, because the complete ones are disappeared anyway, but you can still use this. It's kind of handy to have these up top. So what I can do is I can add a few buttons, because I don't necessarily want to do this find manually. I could add some buttons that say show me only the complete ones, show me only the incomplete ones, and show me all of the tasks. So that's again the same system. I'm gonna move these ones over a little bit to the side, and then I'm gonna add a few more. Let's just control drag this one over here. And let's use our text tool, and let's say show complete. Okay, this is going to be a slightly more complicated button, because it has to do a couple of different things. Now, what does it have to do? How would I go about showing all the complete tasks? Very simple. I go into find, I hit complete, I do perform find, and then I have all my complete ones. Now, if you remember these steps that you have to do, then you know how you can make a script to do this task automatically. Now, scripting sounds very complicated. People will probably think about programming and stuff like that, but it really isn't that complicated at all. You just have to remember the steps that you're doing, go into find mode, choose incomplete, perform find, and there it is. And then you can maybe even add a sort to that script if you want. Let's go to scripts, manage script, and let's create a script for this. Very simple. You just go in your scripts there, go choose new. I'm going to make this a bit smaller so you guys can see. And now we have to, well, what was the first one we were going to do? Show complete tasks. Give it a handy name so you know what the script does, and then we're going to think about what the things were that we were doing. First, we went into find mode. That's the first one we did. Now, when we have all our options here in this side bar, all the script steps that we can choose from, and when we double click one, it shows up in our script, and this is going to be our script. This is where we add a bunch of different steps. Now I've added this enter find mode, but it gives me pause as an option, and that option shows up down here. I don't want this find mode to pause here, I just want it to continue, because I don't want to manually enter any find options. I want those to be done automatically. So let's uncheck that pause, because otherwise my script is going to pause and it's just going to stand there, and that's going to be kind of annoying. I don't want that. So what are we going to do? What was the next step we did? After we went into find mode, we clicked that complete radio button there. Now we can't tell FileMaker to click into a button, but we can tell FileMaker to set a field, to set a certain value into a field. So let's double click this one and let's add this one. Now we're going to have to tell FileMaker two things: which field do I want to enter data into, and what is the data that I want to enter into that field. Now this gives us kind of a unique bit of a problem, if you will. Let's close this one for a second and let's save it. Now we have to kind of find out what the value is, because I've got complete and incomplete, and actually those are the values that show up in that field. I can find out, to be certain, I can go to my tasks here, and I can see that the status is either the word incomplete or it's going to be the word complete. So that's kind of cool. That's what I'm going to need in my script. So let's go back to my script, manage scripts. Let's go into the script, and I know now which field I need to have. I can specify the field in my tasks table. It's going to be the status, and my calculated result, which means the value that I want to enter into that field, is got to be complete. Now, if you just enter complete like this, FileMaker will start looking for a field that is called complete, which you don't have. So if this is a simple text, then you need to put quotation marks around it. like that. So I want the value complete to be entered into the status field. Okay, kind of good. Once I've done that, what did I do then? I hit the perform find button up top. So let's go and see if we can find that one here. Under found sets, it says perform find. Now you have to be careful because there's another one of those things. I think here it says perform find replace. I've actually never ever used that one, so I don't really know exactly what it does, but I always use the perform find here, which is the one you're going to want to do your find. Now if you want, you can add a sort script step 2. I'm going to show all the complete tasks. What do I want to do with those? I don't want to sort them by the incomplete tasks up top because I don't have any incomplete tasks. I'm only going to be seeing the complete tasks. So I might want to sort these by contact. So I'm just going to go into my found sets. It has a sort records. I'm going to perform this without a dialog because I don't want FileMaker asking me how do you want to sort this. I'm going to specify that sort right now, and it says contact and status. It doesn't really have to sort by status because I'm only going to see one status. So I could clear this one and make it real simple. There you go. If our if our tasks have a date, then I could add, for instance, the creation date in there, and let's put them like this so that they are sorted by newest ones up top. So that's kind of a good one. We could maybe add that to the other sort as well, the sort button we have up top. This looks kind of good. We're going to enter find mode, look for all the complete tasks, and then sort. Okay, kind of good. Let's close this one and let's save our script. Now, how do we make this button run that script? Very simple. Just go into button setup and perform, not perform find, but go all the way up top and choose perform script. So when we click this button, a script is run. Which script? Specify show complete tasks. That's the one we're going to want. Okay, and change to hand cursor is set, so that's good. Let's try this out and see what it does. I've got only one incomplete task now. Let's click this button, see what it does. It shows me only the complete tasks and it sorts by contact. So that's kind of cool. I can now say sort me by the incomplete ones up top, but that's not really going to do much good. It's just going to get rid of that sub-summary part, but I've got no incomplete tasks, so nothing is going to show up on top. So this is kind of not an interesting sort when we are showing our complete tasks. Now we can also show our incomplete, and we can show all our tasks. So let's control drag this one over here. Let's use our text tool to show incomplete. It's just big enough. Now I'm going to want this to run another script. I'm going to go back to scripts, manage scripts, and I can actually duplicate this script because this script is going to be almost exactly the same, except this is going to be show incomplete tasks. I'm going to go into find mode. I'm going to set my field status not for the value complete, but for the value incomplete. And the rest is going to stay the same. So let's close and save this one. Now I've got two different ones. And this one has to go button setup, perform script, and perform the other script. Because I copied this button, it's kind of still giving me the same settings as the other one did. Let's click on this button, see what it does. And this now shows me only the incomplete task for John Doe. I can see all the completed tasks and all the incompleted tasks. So that's kind of cool. If I want to reset this and show all my tasks, I need another button. Control drag, something like this. Text tool to select and show all. This could be a bit smaller because it's a little shorter text. Let's go to script, manage script, and let's duplicate another one. Now there are a couple of different ways to do this. I could simply, well actually the simplest way to go about is to go to found sets and say show all records. I don't need to enter find mode for this. I don't need to set a field or perform a find. I can just show all the records and then I can sort them. And the sort is, if I want, maybe not by creation date then, but by status again. or actually I have this one by status here in that button, so I can maybe just leave this one. Actually, by status is the most logical one, so let's use status in descending order. Okay, let's do that. That's kind of a good one. Let's perform without dialog and specify sort order. That's good. Let's close and save this one. And this one has still got the wrong name. Show all tasks. Let's close, save, and then let's link up this button with that script. A button setup, perform script, specify show all tasks. Okay, okay, exit layout, and now we can show all, show incomplete, or show complete. And this really, this kind of buttons and automation really makes it easy for us to just go into our tasks and just get some work done. We can show all our incomplete tasks, and we can see, for instance, that John Doe is an incomplete task, and if we call them, we can just say that this is done. And then if we show all our incomplete, we will see that we don't have any complete ones showing up anymore. One problem though, it says no records match to find this criteria. It's kind of an error because I'm not finding any incomplete tasks, so I'm going to continue. I don't want that error to show up, so let's go back into our scripts and let's add a little something. Let's add a set error capture. Let's add it up top, and what that does is it's going to capture these kinds of error messages that FileMaker could throw up, because your user, if he sees that, he might get a little scared, he might go and get on the phone with you, something weird is going on, and you don't really want to have to deal with that. So let's use this set error capture on. I'm going to copy this one, Control C, I'm going to close and save this one, and I'm going to set this error capture in every single well, I probably don't need it here because show all records is always going to work. So in these two where I have finds, I'm going to error capture as well. So show me the complete ones, that's all of them. Show me incomplete, it shows me nothing, but it also doesn't give me an annoying warning pop-up. So that is an improvement, and I think this is a layout that you can really kind of get to work with, and that can really make your life a lot easier. Okay, I think that's kind of good for this layout. Let's see what else we can do. We now have a couple of different layouts. We've got our task list, we've got our contacts list here, but it's kind of annoying to move back and forth between those layouts like this. And maybe you don't really want your user to go messing around in here as well, because he might end up somewhere like this, and then he won't know what to do, or he won't know how to get out of here. So what I always do is I make a menu that gives you different buttons to kind of always return back to, and then to go to other parts of your database. What I like to do is I'd like to make a separate table for that, just so you don't accidentally make any mistakes, because in that menu, if you base your menu on an existing table, you could accidentally create new records or delete existing records without intending to. So I like to make a new menu layout, a new menu table, and then I will add an ID field just because I always do anyway. And then you don't really need any fields in there, but I like to use a C current date, basically just to display the current date, which is going to be a calculation field, and I like to just put it in there. And you've got a bunch of get functions in FileMaker that you can use to get all kinds of stuff, like for instance the current date. And get current date is one of those. You can find that in the get functions. If you double click it, then that gets added here. The calculation result is going to be a date. And there is one thing very important. I want this calculation, I don't want it to just to get the current date today and to keep that date, because it needs to get the current date again every day. Otherwise it's going to just keep today's date, and that's not handy. You can force that by going to storage options and saying do not store calculation results. So that means recalculate when needed. So that means every time I go into my menu, FileMaker will recalculate the current date, and so it won't, the date won't just stay stuck on the same date. Dates, this is a very important thing also when you're going to do something like calculating the difference between dates or calculating someone's age. You cannot store that because it's not going to update. Okay, very simple. Let's go and click OK. So now we have a menu. It has a date in here. It doesn't have any records, but we can just quickly create one record. Now I don't really want to see any of these fields on here. What I do want to do is go on in the header here and write menu so that everybody knows where they are. Let's make it really nice and big. And then maybe what I want to do is put the date somewhere up here. So let's do insert merge field, and let's go not from the contacts but from the menu table. Let's add that current date. And I'm going to put that like here somewhere, and then I can go into my data, and then in the bottom of my inspector I can kind of choose this date thingy here, and I can format the date if I would like to, but it's looking probably pretty good as it is. Alright, so that's kind of cool. Let's exit this layout, and okay, we've got a nice looking menu. Now I need to add some buttons, but also I need to make sure that this menu is set up so that every time I open my file, I arrive in this menu. You can do that by going to File, File Options, and then you can log in and switch to a layout. Now I'm going to switch to my menu layout. That's kind of good. And in my menu layout, I'm going to go to Edit Layout. I'm going to go to Layout Setup. And I'm going to make sure that in my views, the only view available is the form view and not the list or the table view. So people can't accidentally switch my menu to a table view and become completely lost. So there, I've got my menu. Now I need to add some buttons. Let's edit this layout. Let's go to Insert Picture, and let's say, what do we have? We have contacts. What is a contact like? Let's say my contacts are business people. Do we have something for that? Yeah, you're a guy in a suit. These are again icons from, there is this website that I usually go to called Easy Icon, and you gotta take the language in because otherwise it's like a Chinese site or something. It's really weird. And you can just search for something, and then you can just you get all kinds of options. If you click on an icon, then it gives you all kinds of options in all kinds of different sizes. What I usually do is I use the PNG because that one has transparency that I can use in FileMaker. So I've got my little guy here, my contact. I'm going to add the word contacts in here, and what I usually do to make it look like it's a real button is I'll use one of these rounded rectangles and I'll just drag it around this guy a little bit. Now it's kind of stupid because I made them in the wrong order, but I can change the order here. I can arrange this one to be sent to the back and then the other ones show up again. I've got my box here and I want to kind of give it a decent size, so I can go in here, and if these settings here in position are still on centimeter, you can just click on the centimeter to bring it to points. Points is an easier way to kind of go about making your sizes. So I want to make this 125, and the height I'll just take it about 150. That sounds about right. Now I can take all of these, select them all, go into my arrange and align, and I can just align them on the vertical centers, kind of like this, and then I can choose where I want my contacts to be. I can put it in the middle, somewhat like that, or I can put this one a bit higher, and I can put this one a bit higher as well, so that in the future if I have a button with a long name or two names, then I can just use the space under here to add some more text. Okay, this looks like a nice button. I gotta give this a position somewhere, but it doesn't really matter right now. This looks kind of good. Now I've got my contacts here. I need to make my button go to my contacts layout, so I'm gonna make this a button. I'm gonna give this a very simple go to layout. And I'm going to say specify the layout as the lay contacts. That's where I want to go. I want this to be a hand cursor, so that's kind of cool. If I do this, let's see if this works. I can click on contacts and boom, I show up on my contacts layout. Now I just need a way from here to go back to my menu, and I can simply add a button here up top. I can call that menu, and I can say go to layout, layout menu. Very simple. Now what I like to do is I like to give this a decent position, 10 and let's say 5, 10 from the left and 5 from the top. That's a good one that I can remember, so that I can place this button exactly the same on every single layout, so it looks kind of similar and it's on the exact same position. Now I can change the size as well a bit. I want to make it 80 and the height is 33. Yeah, that's fine by me. So I have to remember the position, it's 10 and 5, because I've got other layouts where I want to put the same button. So I'm going to copy this button, and before I do, I'm going to check out if my hand cursor is on. It's not, so I'm going to turn this on, and then I'm going to copy this button again, copy, and then I'm going to bring this to my other layout, my list of tasks. So I'm going to paste this one here, and if I remember correctly, I think my position was 10 and 5, because FileMaker doesn't remember the position and doesn't paste it on the same spot. So now I've got, if I go into browse mode by exiting the layout, I can click on menu, I can go to contacts, and from contacts back to my menu. Now the only thing I need to do is add a button to go to my task list, and then I am golden. Let's control drag this whole thing, and let's make sure that it stays lined up like that. And let's say I've got task list. Actually, what I want to do is I want to line these out in the middle, and now I might have to arrange these again. Yeah, somewhat like this. Let's arrange this one as well, so that's definitely in a good position. Okay, task list, I don't want this guy anymore, so I'm going to insert another picture. Which one will I choose? Probably something like a checklist or something like that. Do I have a checklist? Yes, I have a checklist. Now what I always like to do to get this in the exact same position as this one, either you go here and you remember these values here, but this is a very, very strange value, which is not really, it's kind of weird. I don't really want to deal with halves, but what I can do is I can just select both of them. Then I can use my arrange here to align the top edges and align the left edges. That way my checkboxes are now in the exact same position as my guy. The guy is hidden in the background, so I can just arrange this one to send it backwards. Then I can deselect it and select my guy and delete him, and now he's gone. I've got my contacts and my task list. I can go to button setup and go to layout, layout, list, tasks. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's hit Control B to go back into browse mode. I've got my contacts, my menu, and my task list. Awesome. And back to my menu. So this is a very simple way that you can make a beautiful looking menu. Everyone that opens your file will end up in here, and then or will start from here. And that's also a good way to, for instance, control if you have different users. Maybe some users can go in here and some users can't go in there. So you can control everything from inside your menu. You can control where people are allowed or are not allowed to go. So I think this makes a nice looking beginner example. Is there anything extra we can add? You know what? Actually, we can. Let's go into edit layout and add some fun stuff. Let's double click on this one. I can't change anything because this one is locked, so let's unlock it for a second. Double click again. Let's add a simple website a tab, and let's add a map tab. These are just two kind of handy things you can do in FileMaker that we hadn't shown yet. So let's see if we can add these. You have two things here, or one thing here, a web viewer tool that you can use to display, for instance, a website or a Google map with an address. So let's put the web viewer on here, and this one is the website tab. So we're going to go to a custom web address, and the web address is not going to be this one. We're going to specify it. The web address is, we're going to delete all of this stuff. We're going to select and delete. The web address is going to be our website for our client, of course. So we get a bunch of settings here, but let's say that these are all okay. And then we have to, let's go back into browse mode and let's see. We've got a website here actually, johndoe.com. I don't think that's going to work, so let's say that John Doe is a Google guy. And then if you click website, let's see what happens. FileMaker will actually go and load that website of that client for us. So if you quickly want to look up some info on this client, then we can use this one, or we could just basically click on this one. It's kind of the same, but the option is there. And if you don't want to show a website in here, what you might be able to do, which could be kind of handy, is you can use the map function here, and you can add the same web viewer, and instead of using a website address, you can use a Google Maps, and you can kind of define all the fields from your contacts. You can put them in here, the city, you can put the address in there, you can have a state, and you can have a zip code, and then the country. Yeah, that's going to be, we don't have a field for that, but we don't have to fill this in. I think we can give this one a try. Let's see what this does. Now the address is completely made up, so this might not work. Let's see what our map displays. It's going to look for something, but it's probably not really going to show us anything quite interesting. It shows a map and it's looking for something, but this address doesn't exist. But this is a very handy way. Now my screen resolution is only very small for this screencast, but if you have like a slightly larger screen resolution, this kind of thing could be really handy to just quickly see where a client of you is located, where exactly he lives, if you need to go there, or if someone is going to be driving there. And you can, this is just simple, the Google Maps website, so you can immediately create directions from your place to his place, etc., etc. So you can really use this to the fullest. So these are some cool extra features that you could be adding to your contacts database. So we have our contacts layout, and until now we've just been browsing back and forth between these contacts, which is kind of good. But sometimes you might want to see a list, or you're looking for someone, and then just clicking through here is not that handy. You can use the search function if you want, but sometimes a list is just a more intuitive thing to look at. So what we can do is we can go and make a list for our contacts, so we can more easily get an overview. Let's go to new layout. Let's go to let's make one based on contacts. List contacts. This is going to be for our computer, and it's going to be a list. So now we get our list. We can go back and get our field picker back. We would like to add, what do we want to add? The full name, address, number, zip code. Do we want to add all these fields? Maybe it's handier if we just have the telephone number and the email, so we can click those right away. Maybe, what else do we need? City, state, city. Let's just use this. Let's put them like so, and like this. Let's drag this over here, half and half. Okay, looking kind of good. That's it for my field picker. The full name field is, let's see that all the fields look like they're a little high, so let's drag them down a bit, and this body field can be a bit smaller. There we go. Let's see, the fields are all a bit big, so I'm gonna, Control Z, I'm gonna make them a bit smaller, and then you can just adjust them a little bit so it looks a bit better. So I've made the labels and the fields a little bit better, so that looks kind of good. If we exit our layout, we can see that we again have that annoying delineation. So let's go into layouts, layout setup, and let's deselect this one. Okay, so now I can see all my contacts. I've only got 2, and I can see their information. So if I'm looking for someone, I can immediately call them, or I can immediately email them if I want. I can make this email into a button, as we've done before. Now, there is always a kind of a trick. I can do a send mail, and I can specify this field name as the email. The only bummer with this is that if you now would like to enter someone's email address in this field, you cannot click this field anymore, or you can't click this field, but if you click this field, you're basically launching that button. The only way to get into this field is to maybe, for instance, go in here and then tab. This way you can type into this field, so you can get in there, but if you turn that field into a button, then you cannot click on that field to enter a field name. Now, if you don't want to enter the field name in this layout, then that's fine, or the email address in this layout, then that's fine. You can do it this way, but usually what you would do then is put the button next to the field, like a send email button here, so you can send the email that way. Because if I would now like to enter Jane Doe's email address, that would not work. Now, this layout is usually not the one you're going to use to enter data. Usually this layout is going to be full of existing customers, and so you'll probably have their email address. And also, if you want to make sure that people see that this is a button, you can just make this blue and underlined, and then people will kind of see that, oh yeah, I shouldn't click that because that's immediately going to make me email. So that's a choice you have to make. Do you want to do that or not? What you do want to do in this one is make this a button as well, and you can make this a go-to layout, lay contact. So basically what we're going to do is, if you click this button, we're going to go to the contacts layout, but if we click on this field, then that you can kind of see that the blue one is the active one. So if you click inside a certain record, then that record becomes active, and if you then go to the contacts layout, then that one is the one you're going to be seeing. So basically this button brings us to the contacts layout, and because we've clicked inside this record, this is going to be the record we're going to be seeing. So we're going to make sure first that people know that this is a button. We're going to do it like so. And now if we click, for instance, John Doe, because Jane Doe is selected, if we click John Doe, we will arrive at John Doe. Now we need to be able to get from here into that list, so I'm going to move this one over just a little bit. I'm going to take this menu, move it like so, and then I'm going to use my text tool to say show list, and I want to make this button a little less prominent, a little smaller. There you go. Let's make a button setup, go to layout, list contacts, that's good. A show list. Okay, now we can go back and forth from Jane Doe to our list to John Doe. There we go. Back to the menu, contacts, list, and we can just maneuver everywhere we would like to go. Kind of good, I think. So this is it. It was a simple exercise, but I hope it taught you something about FileMaker. If you have any problems or there's something that you don't understand, you can always let me know, and I will try my best to answer you as quick as possible. Remember that this is just a very small, simple beginning, and you can build onto this as much as you want. In our next exercise, we're going to do a